thing. Would this be like a federal court challenge? Because you were mentioning it would be up to everyone individually.
See, there's two different kinds of court issues we're talking about. I think you wanted to know whether we would consider suing over what they're doing to C-45. I would. I'm investigating whether we certainly know that when a government exceeds its constitutional authority, there's grounds for a constitutional challenge. If a government surrenders its constitutional authorities, it's never happened before. So I'm investigating that. The other piece is the government says, not the government, I'm part of the government. Mr. Harper and his ministers say, I'm always very careful of this, by the way, please don't say Harper government all the time. That's what Mr. Harper would like. We're all part of the government as MPs. It's just his Privy Council, which gets a little absurd to say Privy Council all the time. So Stephen Harper and his ministers would like us to believe that navigation rights are protected in common law. What that means is that anyone who sees that their rights to use a waterway are being denied has the right to hire a lawyer and go to court, not to enforce a statute, but to claim my rights to navigation, which I have in common law, are being infringed. That's a very expensive process, and it would probably involve you'd start with your Supreme Court in any province, then your appeal division, probably go to the Supreme Court of Canada. So that's saying to any Canadian who cares about navigation, don't worry. When you've got a couple $100,000 to spend, you can defend your navigation yourself, because we're not going to. So that's the two different kinds of court cases we're looking at. One would be piece by piece, waterway by waterway, to enforce our rights, which is what Mr. Nicholson and Mr. LaBelle seems to think we're going to be willing to do, while as they retreat from a head of power that they've had under the BNA Act. No previous government has ever thought that it could retreat from powers assigned to that level of government by our Constitution.
Big one. And
the other one would be, would be this question of, can you possibly get a constitutional challenge for a decision by a Prime Minister and Privy Council to actually retreat from a constitutional authority that they have been assigned, and which, under the principle of exclusivity, no other level of government can fill the void.
Would that be the basis for your challenge then?
Yes, but it's a long way. I mean, I really want to get these amendments through. But down the road, if you never know.
Fullness comes from.
Bruce Heyer has been known to say I'm on hopium. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know where it comes from.
Beaten down, don't you?
No, I just start right back up again. I mean, the thing is, it's not about politics, and it's not about me. It's about whether I'm about to let Stephen Harper destroy everything I love. So I have a really deep, deep well of the things I love, and that means you can't give up, and you can't get discouraged, and you can't even get depressed, even the teensiest little bit. So to the by-elections, we had a tremendous success yesterday, and I think there's some lessons for people to look at. Obviously, I'd be happier if I had 2 new members of Parliament coming to help me, so that when I need to go to Doha later this week, because I'm the only opposition member of Parliament planning to go to the climate negotiations, right now I'm juggling, can I go, because the C-45 amendments may not be done yet, we might not be through yet. I can't abandon the C-45 amendments to go to the climate negotiations. I wish that those parties, which clearly have more than one member of Parliament, could spare someone to go to the climate negotiations, but as it stands right now, Peter Kent will be going. And so I would really have loved to have 2 new MPs so that they could cover the bills while I have to go to Doha. I may not get to Doha, that's what's happening. In any case, there's some interesting lessons, I think, that may have been missed by the pundits about the by-elections yesterday, particularly Calgary-Centre and Victoria. Both seats were presumed to be safe seats for the party whose MP resigned. So Calgary-Centre was supposed to be a safe seat for the Conservatives, and Victoria was supposed to be a safe seat for the NDP. And in both cases, those parties eked out a narrow win, and in both cases, significant challenges were brought forward by the Green Party. So it tells you another thing about the Green Party. It tells you we're not regional. If we can really come within striking distance of winning in Calgary-Centre, which is an Albertan urban riding of really interesting young professionals. Half the population of Calgary-Centre is under 40 in terms of voters. If you look at Victoria, on the other hand, an older population, different concerns, very strongly against super tankers on our coastline or expansions of oil pipelines. And the media had missed this. Unfortunately, the Forum Research, which was working, I think, for the Globe and Mail, only did one poll in Victoria and lost interest in it because they presumed that the NDP had such a huge lead, it wasn't worth watching it anymore. And we knew the momentum had shifted. I think if the election had been a week from now, we would take that seat because the momentum was huge. So I'm feeling encouraged by the fact that I think we've proven that the Green Party is not a small blip, or just that my seat is the only one we'll ever win. I think a finish as strong as everyone watched Donald Galloway seesawing through the night with Murray Rankin. They eked out a win in what was supposed to be a safe seat. In both cases, the parties that thought they had safe seats were reduced substantially in their popular vote. The Conservatives dropped from, in the previous election, over 50%. This time they got just under 37%. The NDP in 2011 had over 50%. This time they eked out 37%, with us absolutely nipping at the heels. By-elections are different. That needs to be said. You're not electing a federal government. And we had hoped that people would be able to vote more with their heart, vote for what they believed in. There was a definite fear campaign from the other parties as we got closer and closer to Election Day. And in Calgary, at least there was a Conservative Party that was obviously going to take the seat. But in Victoria, it was absurd. There were a tremendous effort from the NDP to say that if people didn't vote NDP, the Conservative would win. And if you didn't remember, the Conservative got 14%. And that was clear from the beginning. So we're very encouraged by the results. And I have to say that the other component to these great results for the Green Party, historic highs really, except for winning in Saanich-Gulf Islands, is the quality of the candidates. We're attracting people that simply, I don't think, would have run for us in 2011. Donald Galloway is an extraordinarily talented, brilliant, respected law professor and nationally known expert in immigration and refugee law. Chris Turner is a nationally known and respected journalist and author whose books have been nominated for numerous awards. Both are very committed to continuing to work with what just began, which is the recognition that the Green Party can win seats anywhere, and we will win seats anywhere. So, if you have any questions, that's fine.
That fiscal conservatives in particular might be thinking of the Green Party because they feel as though on the environmental side that things like this omnibus bill show that they can't be fiscally conservative and environmentally conscious at the same time.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who would have described themselves as red Tories really feel homeless. And even progressive conservatives who never thought that they were on the red Tory camp aren't comfortable, particularly in Alberta. There's a real schism at the federal level between the Wild Rose camp and the progressive conservative camp. And clearly, a lot of the progressive conservatives in Calgary-Centre just didn't vote yesterday. They just didn't vote. And it was a way of saying, you know, there were candidates who could have run for the Conservatives who would have represented more of the Alison Redford side of the conservative Alberta spectrum. But I think it was clearly understood there was a lot of pressure from senior federal Conservative Party hierarchy that Joan Crockett was their chosen and anointed candidate, and she's very much more on the Wild Rose side. People who are fiscally conservative are attracted to the Green Party because our policies are fiscally responsible. But we're also, I think, policy for policy, we're at least as and potentially more socially progressive than the NDP, and we're certainly the most environmentally conscious party. So we appeal across a spectrum, and that's one reason that we came so close to winning. Obviously, some people say, well, you didn't win anything, so therefore it means nothing. But I think it's very, very significant that we came within, the final tally, just a couple percentage points between the NDP and the Greens in what was supposed to be a safe Green seat. I mean, bear in mind the day that these, not to pick on CBC all the time, I feel terrible, but it's the example that comes to mind. The day the writ was dropped, even though our candidates were nominated in both ridings, the early reports from most media didn't mention that there was a Green Party candidate nominated. And the coverage continued to be as though there wasn't a Green Party candidate nominated for quite a while in some of the major coverage. So I hope that will stop. You know, if we're nominating and running candidates, we may not do well. We deserve the scrutiny, But to omit the fact that we're running, it takes us a while to catch up when you've nominated a great candidate and it's not even included in the reporting.
Conservative vote in Victoria go to the Greens to stop the NDP?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there was, you know what happened to the Conservative vote in Victoria? Stephen Harper. That's what happened. At one of the all-candidate debates, poor Dale Gann, who's a really nice guy, actually, they asked him, what's your biggest liability? And he said, well, the sitting government. Stephen Harper and Joe Oliver saying that anybody who was opposed to the Enbridge pipeline was a foreign-funded radical did not improve their chances in Victoria. They were toast in Victoria, regardless of, it was not a vote to hurt the NDP. It was just a lot of people in Victoria who voted Conservative just a little bit more than a year and a half ago could not vote Conservative now because they are outraged by the assault on things like the Navigable Waters Protection Act, the Fisheries Act, the destruction of the Environmental Assessment Act, and the assault on the motivations of British Columbians who want to keep our coasts free of supertankers. That's a very fundamental, widely held view in British Columbia, and I think other Conservative MPs in British Columbia ought to look at these results and wonder if they can carry their own seats next time if this assault on democracy continues. A lot of people in Victoria, I can tell you, are also very exercised about the Canada-China Investment Treaty. And they would, if the Conservatives in BC want to see themselves re-elected, they better do whatever they can to stop Mr. Harper from ratifying the Canada-China Investment Treaty. It's still not ratified, and it rests entirely as an order in council at this point because it wasn't put forward for a vote in Parliament.